Okay, let's get started. Next slide, please, Claire. Just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for attending the NWAA webinar in partnership with KPMG. My name is Sharon McDonald, Chief Executive at Northwest Aerospace Alliance. Just want to update you on a few things. Next slide, please, Claire. I'll update you on our annual conference, the ball, and some of our programs, etc. So next slide, please, Claire. In relation, oh, sorry, I jumped one there, but never mind. In relation to events and in hopeful anticipation of the lifting of restrictions, we have booked our annual conference, which will take place on the 23rd of September, we hope. David Bailey will facilitate the conference, and we also have some exciting speakers lined up and also some sponsors who will be exhibiting. So that hopefully will go ahead on the 23rd of September. We've also booked our annual aerospace ball that will take place on the 8th of October at the Duncan Hall Hotel. As always, a great fun night to be had with great food, live entertainment, as well as a DJ and dancing until very late. Next slide, please, Claire. For those of you who weren't on our last couple of webinars, I still want to keep bragging about this, and Catherine is on the call today. We are very proud that our SC21 CNG cluster of excellence has continued to go from strength to strength. And 7 of the cluster participants have been awarded funding amounting to 1.28 million. That's to complete their competitiveness and growth programme of improvement. So well done to all of those, and congratulations to each of the companies. Both our SC21 CNG and NATEC programmes are continuing as normal. We can use virtual communications if you want to discuss either of those things with Catherine for SC21 CNG and for Glenn with NATEC. Last week, NWAA concluded its peer-to-peer networking programme with 12 Lancashire companies involved. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of those who got involved with that. Next slide, please, Claire. So our upcoming webinars on the 1st of April in partnership with CG Tech, they're going to present on Survive and Thrive with NC verification and optimization. On the 6th of May, we are partnering with SciTech at Daresbury, and their topic is Industrial Digitalisation Accelerator. And on the 20th of May, we will have AMRC on our webinar, which topic is still to be announced. We are adding webinars to our calendar all the time, so you will receive communications, but if not, just take a look at the events page on our website. Thank you. Next slide, please, Claire. Just before I go, I'd like to say, please would you like to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter? We'll also follow you if you invite us to, just so that we can all spread our good news and get the networking up to speed out there on those media. Finally, I'd just like to remind you, we do have a networking session after this webinar where you can join a speakers table. We've got the NWAA table, we've got Glenn Bullen on a NATEC table, and you can speak to one of the speakers, you can speak to myself, you can speak to Catherine about SC21 CNG, or you can alternatively, if you see a delegate on the event that you want to speak to, get in touch with them on chat or during the presentation, and you can arrange to have a table to have a one-to-one meeting if that's what you want to do. So thank you for listening. I'd just like to ask everyone to mute their microphones, please, during the presentation. And I'll now hand over to Glyn Bellamy and Ian Prince from KPMG. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that, Sharon. And yes, hi everybody. I'm Glyn Bellamy from KPMG. I'm a a partner in our sort of deals business, but focused on aerospace and defence. So I've obviously presented to yourselves previously around sort of what we're seeing in the aerospace industry, particularly sort of during COVID, and how we're seeing the supply chain react, and sort of what that's meant from lenders, etc. Today, it's one of my colleagues is going to talk, Ian Prince. I'll let Ian introduce himself, but really, this is sort of very much to talk about sort of the sort of the post-EU transition. And Ian isn't sort of doesn't sort of focus purely on aerospace and defence, so he's going to bring it very much from the broader perspective. And then obviously we can sort of come back with some specific sort of examples from an aerospace perspective. And I've got another colleague on, Alistair Horrocks, who also works in the industry with myself. And again, we'll provide some of that sort of industry specific insights. But Ian, I'll sort of hand over to you to run through your slides.
Excellent. Thank you, Glyn, and hello everybody. Ian Prince. So I lead KPMG's supply chain practice, and as Glyn said, I'll put my hands up. I am not an aerospace and defence expert, but I know enough, hopefully, maybe to get a little bit dangerous in this sort of space, but go quite sector wide. All right. So today, what I wanted to do is just give everybody a business overview of the deal. Okay. So what does the deal mean for everybody? All businesses, be it if you're large multinationals, or if you're small niche engineering businesses, from that side. I've also got a checklist for everybody. So, okay, great on the macro side and on the business angle, but what does it mean for me as a business? And that's across your operations, across the compliance and the risk side, but also on the governance of the business. I'll then drop into a few of the specialisms that have been called out in the deal. One's around rules of origin, and there's another around regulation and where it could affect you and will affect you in the future. And then what I want to do is give a little bit around the types of projects that people are doing at the moment to assure that they're still on track and trading and business in an international supply chain as aerospace is. And then also just go, so this is what's happening in another sector. Okay, so the types of things that are going on that everybody's doing, because there are some industries and sectors that are almost a little bit like lemmings running to the end of the cliff and jumping off and thinking it's not going to happen. And I'll hopefully bring alive some of the things that could affect you in the sector on that side. So I'm going to sound like a number 10 Downing Street person. Next slide, please. But I'm actually going to jump 2. 3. Go another one. Right. So firstly, there are a number of principles behind this deal that I want to make sure everybody knows. Okay, out of this, and lots of businesses that we work in, they have literally gone, oh, great, deal happened. We've got a deal. It's going to take a few months to be implemented, be a bit bumpy, but product will all flow and services will flow. And what I just want to let everybody know here is great that we've got a deal, but it is impacting supply chain flow, cost of operations, and where people are making, manufacturing, sourcing, buying components across an international supply chain. Okay, aerospace has one of the best, most regulated and highly visible supply chains there are, and some of the best data behind it. But even you as a group and in this sector will be affected, and I'll come on to it as well and give you examples and some other things that aren't happening. All right. So firstly, right, the deal itself. Okay, so it's good news that we've got a deal. No deal was horrendous, but that trade deal that was signed and only updated on the government website just before New Year. So Glyn, thanks. It ruined my Christmas. Is actually that deal is just about product. Okay, there is virtually in over 1,000 pages. It is all about physical product and the movement of product across borders. All right, links to customs, links to other things called rules of origin, and how you look at process or manufacturing and how we trade product. Services were not included. Regulation wasn't included. Data's not included. So there is a lot of lot of areas that are not included. There are a number of deals with the EU that need to happen all behind this. Okay, so you've got some global regulation and standards that you adhere to, so that's brilliant. And fingers crossed, the EU and UK will copy and paste those. But I just want to make sure everybody's aware that it's just on physical product and only in certain sectors. All right. There are updates literally every day that the government is dropping onto their website. And I think, Claire, we're sending out the pack later on to everybody. So you can click on that link if you don't know where to go to. But they are evolving. It's almost like they're adding addendums all the time. All right. When they've agreed things in the background. Okay, on that side. In the actual deal itself, there is about 500 pages on various sectors. Aerospace has a small section, retail has a small section, pharma and healthcare have a small section, automotive has got a huge section, because there was a lot of pressure on creating a deal for the automotive sector. And I'll come on to that because you will also have implications to that as well. All right. So next bit, focus completely, and clients have looked at going, right, this is the UK and the EU. We've got to remember that there's a third party involved in this, and that's the rest of the world. All right. To bring that into perspective in a trade deal, okay, the UK government has only signed 63 countries with a trade deal to. I think it might be 64, the Cook Islands or somebody else might have come in. There are over 100 countries that we do not have a trade deal with at the moment. There are certain trade angles. Hello, Craig. Lynn, you've just come on my screen for some reason. Anyway, we'll come back to the pack in a minute. What we've ended up there is just we have over 100 countries. Thank you, Claire. We have over 100 countries where we do not have a formal trade deal. We have arrangements in, and aerospace includes some of those arrangements, but we don't have a deal with India. We don't have a deal with China, and we don't have a deal with the States. All right. So the one thing I want everybody to watch, you've got to watch out on those trade deals. Okay. 62 of the 63 that we've gone through have been rollover UK EU, have been EU trade deals that have just almost copy and paste in it. But you've really got to look at, make sure that you know which countries we're about to do trades with, because you're in such a global supply chain. All right. So, right, coming on to some of the problems, customs declarations. All right. You will have all had to do customs declarations if you're dealing in international supply chains outside the EU or outside the EU. Right now, those customs declarations have increased exponentially. You've got to remember, if you send product to Europe now, you need to export it. You need documentation there. You then need to import it into the EU, into a country, and you need a whole host of documentation there as well. Just so you know, there are easements, what are called easements going on at the moment. Fundamentally, that allows you to declare at a certain point and things like that. There are deadlines, and it's just been pushed back with the UK and EU unilaterally recently. But the amount of documentation and paperwork just to send product to Europe now will be increased exponentially, and the EU and UK are getting on at the borders at the moment. They've only implemented about 20% of the deal. Okay, there are going to be physical checks at borders, and there's going to be whole customs documentation. To put that into perspective as well, retail in that sector is grinding to a halt in what product is coming into the UK and UK to Europe at the moment. The only thing they're being helped for by is there's only 40% of the volume going across border between UK and EU at the moment. When that starts to increase, when we all, touch wood, as talked about before, come out of lockdown, that's brilliant. There is going to be delays at the ports. Okay, So do not think that it's all going smoothly and we haven't used Kent yards. That's because over half the trucks haven't left either the UK or Europe at the moment. Right, port congestion. I want everybody to think about four types of ports. All right, you've got the short sea, the English Channel one, so Dover, Calais, Hooker, Holland, Harwich, things like that. Okay, you've then got, and also those, so that's where the majority of our flow goes, Dover, Calais route. Okay, when we see a return to the normalization of flows, we are expecting delays. Okay, so you've got to all look at your routes. Deep sea ports, so the Felixstowe, Southamptons of the world, there is a shortage of containers. So anybody that does sea containers needs to be aware that the container cost has gone up from £3,000 a container to over £10,000 a container if you're bringing product in from China. All right. Air freight, and we all know what's happening with air freight, you know, and on the air side at the moment, is the volume just isn't there. So there is no congestion. People are using air freight more and more now. All right, on that side. And the final ports that I want you to be really aware of is Northern Ireland, the ports to Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. So anybody that has an aerospace supply chain that's linked into Northern Ireland or Southern Ireland, the amount of customs checks and delays and the change in product flow is significant. Okay, Holyhead to Dublin, the volume has dropped by over 50%. Okay, Cherbourg to Rosslare has gone up by 200% because people are bypassing the UK to go to Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland within the deal is fundamentally commercially in the EU. So if you're sending products to Northern Ireland, you've got to do all the customs documentations and declare what they are. You've also got to prove that that product's not going into Southern Ireland, because it would then be going into the EU and then straight through into the EU. So there is extra documentation that everybody's got to make sure they're clear on. All right. So there's that. It's point number 8. Right. One of the kickers in the deal is rules of origin. Now, in the aerospace sector, because of the amount of insurance, data assurance, data and integrity you have to have in, and all naming conventions, you're in the gold star, yeah? And you've got to know and have visibility of global supply chains. But even then, in the deal itself, there is what's called rules of origin. And what that is stopping, and the EU are instrumental in this, okay? What that is stopping is the UK becoming the warehouse of Europe. So that is people bringing product from Asia, North America, Africa, South Australasia, bring it into the UK, not adding any value to it, and delivering it into Europe. Because what Europe want to do is make sure product, if it's made, or if there are components, or if it's any sort of sourcing, if we are not adding any value to it, the EU want to make everybody's life almost as difficult as possible, because they want your business and entity in Europe. Okay, so you will have seen lots of stuff in the fashion, in retail, and anybody that's in manufacturing that is just does cutting or packaging. If they bring product into the UK from Asia, you pay a duty on it. If you then send that product to Europe, EU then goes, okay, you've not changed the commodity code of that product, therefore you're not adding any value, therefore I'm going to put a tariff on that, and regulation, and extra customs documentation, because the UK, you are no longer in the EU. Fundamentally, retailers, wholesalers, and distributors in all sectors have stopped selling into Europe because of that one clause in the contract, rules of origin. Okay, because aerospace product, a lot of it doesn't have a tariff, but if you haven't got the right commodity code, you could be having double, triple tariff on your products. All right, so we'll probably do a bit chat about that in a minute, but I just really one that you need to be alive on. Right, next one is people. Because the UK has come out of the EU, we are no longer have free movement in the EU, okay? And the main element to that is you can only work a certain number of days in the EU without having to apply for a large amount of extra visas, and each country is different. If you're implementing a system or doing some engineering work in Denmark, after a certain number of days, you need to apply for special visas now. And you can't do 90 days and just think that's it. It's 90 out of 180. You've got to add up each consecutive element in your 90 out of any 180. Okay. So fundamentally what the EU are doing is saying, okay, if you want to be an engineer in Europe, I want you to base yourself here in the EU. I don't want you to fly in and come and do a lot of work, you know, from the UK into the EU, and then do a lot of work and then fly in on a Monday, fly back on a Friday over a year. I fundamentally want to base that person in the EU. I want to base the business, and I want to base the spare parts. Okay, so it's really going to affect people who are in the engineering and service trade. Okay, because the UK thought, do you know what? If the EU want it, I'll have it as well. So we put a reciprocal bit in it as well. All right. So it's affected me. I'm dealing with an automated warehouse at the moment, and all of the system and all of the parts of the robotic element of it all come from Italy. We've had to change the provider of it because we can't have an engineer coming to the UK for X amount of days over 180. All right. So if you think about it, it's limiting the movement of people. All right. Next bit, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland. I've talked a little bit about this. You've got to make sure that Northern Ireland is treated as if it's in the EU for sending product there or receiving it. Okay. Part of the Northern Irish Protocol, it's political on it as well. And if you think about, nobody wants to put the border. Okay. So the UK government did the unilateral decision about opening the border gate at the ports to allow product in, and they've given it a 6-month extension. That fundamentally has thrown the problem back to the EU. So at the moment, people can send product from UK, GB, into Northern Ireland, go straight across the border into Southern Ireland, onto a ferry into France. It's in. All right. So the EU have got the problem about Northern Ireland at the moment. They'll throw it back to the UK. All right. So just so you know that a little bit of the politics there. Right. Once I've now sent product to the EU, and I've got all the customs documentation, I've got all the rules of origin, and my engineer's allowed to deliver it, I've got to make sure my commercial invoice is correct into the right country, and I've got to make sure my VAT is correct and paid in the right country. All right? Because you are not an entity in Europe, there are then challenges that you've got to make sure you're paying the right VAT and you've got the right commercial invoice. Okay? It's tripping a lot of people up, that one. Right, services. Services and professional qualifications and licenses are not in the deal. Still to be agreed. Okay? So that is another mini deal of what we, as I just talked about right at the start. Okay? Regulation, and that is each sector is different, and we would like to think from an aerospace side, a lot of the regulations will be copy and pasted, but it hasn't been agreed yet. All right. So I want to bring it to live in the automotive sector. Okay. So in the deal, it's got one of the biggest sections on the automotive side. Is what they did is said, right, fundamentally, UK, if you want to make product in Derby or in Tyneside or Teesside, Nissan, if you want to make that product up in the Northeast and assemble those cars, at the moment, 70% of the components come from Asia. But in the next 3 years, you've got to make sure only 30 or 40% of those components come from Asia, because that additional or that difference has now got to come from the UK or EU. Otherwise, we're going to slap tariffs on you. Okay. So what the deal has done, and they really went to town on the automotive element, what they've said is, right, we want to change where the source of those component parts are coming from, not from Asia, but from the EU or UK. So we then can allow you not to have tariffs put in. In the aerospace sector, I would watch that like a hawk, okay? because there is a precedent there as well. Okay, on that side. Services I've talked about, legal requirements. There is a small section about the legal and whether it's like in the European court or the UK court. And there has been a copy and paste of, where if you're a UK solicitor lawyer and an EU lawyer, you can do things, but that's the only part. All right. Data has not been agreed yet. So if you're storing data of a European business in the UK, it has not been agreed about how you store it, where you store it, and what protocols you have around it. Okay, so the initial plan is that was to be agreed by the 1st of June. There are some really positive noises coming out about we will allow transfer of data, but it's not been formally agreed, so you've got to watch it. Okay, so what I want just to let everybody know is think product on that side, but there's lots of these mini agreements that are just making product flow. It's like going through treacle. All right, so I'll come back. We'll probably have some questions on lots of these in the thing, but I just want to give you a bit of a wide sector. Right, next slide, please. Thank you, Claire. Right, so what Glenn and I have done and the team that we've had is, this is not just a supply chain issue or commercial issue. This has got customs and regulation over it, and it's also got legal and governance. All right, and there's also some opportunities in there as well. Okay, so what we've done here, this is a bit of a cheat sheet for everybody to take it away. These are the questions to go and ask. So, firstly, on supply chain and commercial, and I'm just going to pick out a few. Do you have full visibility of your tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, where product is coming from and the raw materials that goes in? Because in your rules of origin, proof of origin statements, you need to know all that. Aerospace is top of the class for knowing it, but you've still got to check it. That's linked directly to your commodity codes. And then you've got to look, because your customers will ask you for it. All right. Next one, INCO terms. So international commercial terms. How you do business with international businesses, EU and rest of world. Lots of areas, and people are seeing the lazy person's Brexit strategy has just been changed the INCO terms. I used to collect factory gate. Now I'm going to have it delivered duty paid. Has changes in where ownership takes place, insurance, the finance angle, the freight, who does all the customs, and who takes all the elements of the insurance and the risk. Other sectors of automotive is a big one here. I've seen a big change in that. Some of the big people have just flipped the INCO terms. So you've got to watch it like a hawk, all right? I'll jump down onto customs and regulation. You've got to know all your commodity codes, proof of country of origin. You've got to do your what ifs on the quotas and tariffs. And then you've got to look at the commercial and VAT implications, all right? There are issues if you flow product from the Northwest in Preston, say, and you're delivering it to a French customer, but you go through a Belgian port, there are issues about where your commercial invoice is and where you pay VAT. All right. You've got to flow the physical product, you've got to flow the financial flow, and then you've got to flow your data. All right. Okay, that's good. Talked about data, sector regulation. Again, aerospace is so specific. All of you have some 4- and 5-letter acronyms that I've got no idea what they mean. All right. So you've got to watch those like anything. Right. Legal and governance, what's happening? Okay. So first thing is, on the legal side, you've got to make sure accidentally you're not infringing anything. You're not importing something you shouldn't be. You've got all the documentation. You're not finding yourself liable for any contractual charges or VAT. So there is a check there. If you have intellectual property, where is that intellectual property registered and stored? Okay, so there you've got to remember we're out of the EU now, so you've got to make sure you've got all of that. So some of the great engineering work we have here in the UK, you've got to make sure you've ticked those boxes as well. All right. It has an impact with people with workforce. I talked about engineers. That's the biggest one that we see in this sector. The next bit is then, okay, now I've added all this up, what do I need to do for 2021 and 2022 and 23? Because lots of these are adding 2, 3, 4, 5% on my cost base. So I need to rebudget or replan. All right. We've seen in some sectors, consumer electronics is one of them. Cost of product is going up 20, 30% because of all of these small percentages. All right. The final bit that we're seeing with businesses is corporate structure and governance. Do I need to set up an entity in Europe? Or alternatively, do I need to set up an entity in the UK on that side? And what we're seeing more and more, Glenn and I are seeing more and more, is collaboration and partnerships. Okay, some of them might be your competitors. All right, because as much it might be more difficult for you to get hold of product or deliver product, also your competitors or partners in Europe are also probably having the same challenges here in delivering. I live just down the road from Filton, either or up in the northwest in Preston and Chester and all the other locations you've got up there. So think about your whole supply chain. The business models and operating models will be changing. All right. So I'm just going to do a couple of slides extra we've got because I know we've been talking for quite a while. I'll do it. Rules and origin and customs. Make sure you know, is your commodity code zero duty, yes or no? All right. If it isn't, then you need to check things. Don't just fall down the trap thinking aerospace is all zero rated. Lots of the codes that you have are non-aerospace, and specifically the indirect products that you use. If you do processing, processing means manufacturing, cutting, packaging, adding value, making things. You've got to make sure if you do that, you've changed the commodity code so you don't necessarily have to pay an extra tariff on it. Okay, so when you do deliver it to the either EU or rest of the world, you've got that re-exporting correct and not accidentally defaulting to another tariff rate, because that's where the double duty might come in. All right, so next slide, Claire. Right, really simple example. All right, I take components from China and I bring them in and assembled in France. I don't have a deal between the EU and China at the moment, but they are going to get one this year. The UK isn't. All right, so just watch that like a hawk. But at the moment, that pays tariff coming into the EU. I then assemble that in France and I bring that into a warehouse in the UK. The UK will decide, has that French assembly plant done enough processing to change the commodity code? If it hasn't, I'm going to stick a tariff on it because I think that comes from China. And it might be value, it might be weight, or it might be processing, what you've done to it. And then, okay, I've now got a customer, you've now and I've got to potentially provide duty if I cannot guarantee it's not going into Southern Ireland. All right. If I'm sending product to my customer back into Europe, including Southern Ireland, I've got to pay duty again because the EU thinks that's a product from Europe, from the UK, and bizarrely goes, well, actually, when we did something in France, we didn't do anything. We're going to imagine that product's from China. So there is a double and if not triple duty on it. It is the bizarre circumstance in it. You might smile and laugh. It's the Percy Pig syndrome. All right. You might have seen it in the press. All right. Germany to UK to Southern Ireland and then back to the UK. Nobody's doing anything to the Percy Pig, or not enough. Hence why there's lots of tariffs on there. All right. Right. Next quick slide. Map all your flows out. Look at all of them. You'll find where there is complication, and then you've got to simplify it. Next one. I'm going to rattle through these now, Claire. Right, regulation and compliance, you've got to watch like a hawk. I'm going to bring this up. The food sector was due to have an implementation of food regulation on the 1st of April, okay? The government 2 weeks before that was due to go live, kicked it down the can for 6 months. All right, because the retailers all went, if you implement it, you are adding 20 lots of bureaucracy. Any bit of animal product that in the food chain needed a vet certificate to go to Northern Ireland. All right, you will have a similar thing in aerospace around physical checks. All right, but I just want to, you've got to watch this like a hawk. Okay, Claire, could you just go to, actually, because I'm conscious of time, could you just go to the second to last slide now? It's the one with that'll do. That one will do there. Right. So what I just wanted to do with everybody is just think about your supply chain, get it visible, look at the products you make, where you make, and what the processing side of it, and get your commercials right. Understand the customs and tariffs and the VAT financial bit, and then make sure you're not accidentally tripping yourself up, both from a legal or a regulation side. And then three last points, I think. Number one, do the maths. All right, your supply chain, if it's international, will change because a 5 or 10 or 20% will have impacted it. Look at your governance structure, and if you think this is difficult, put yourself in your competitors or your partners and go, is there an opportunity here to actually change how we work? And therefore, then I can look at taking the advantage of this, because for Make UK and what I do in the UK, how I make and add value and process, there is a huge opportunity for us to do that, to do this. All right. Hopefully that is a whistle-stop tour of the deal, and I've given you the hotspots. And then I think, Glyn, if I come back to you, I think it might have been open to the floor for the last sort of 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think thanks for that, Ian. I was going to say, Claire, what's the is the plan to sort of have some Q&A now, or sort of in the room afterwards?
And we were going to move to the air meet. Is that right, Sharon? Yeah. I'm just going to put the thing in.
I think Sharon's on. Are you on mute, Sharon?
Mute, Sharon.
Of course I was. So perhaps we have 2 or 3 questions now, and then any other questions, they can join your table on the networking session. Okay. Open for questions, anyone?
My first question is, can we have that presentation?
Yes, it's being videoed. It will be sent to you.
Great.
Yeah. And
interesting.
Sharon, I will say, you know, on that, what Glyn and I talked quite heavily about, and I know with Claire about, do we go really deep down into the aerospace and the complications? But we actually thought, do you know what? Let's pull it up, because this is what businesses are all trying to deal with across the whole across all the sectors. 90% is the same at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I found it really, really useful.
Yeah.
In the chat box at the minute is the link to the Air Meet. Please be sure that you use Chrome as a browser. Enter that into Chrome. You'll be asked to register, and then you can join whichever table takes your fancy when you get into the networking session. I'll see you all there. Okay.
Look forward to it.
Thank
See you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
See you in a moment.
Bye. Bye.